So what I want to talk a little bit about today is some current topics in cybersecurity. Cybersecurity is one of those great buzzwords the media invented. Basically, it just means computer security as is related to online activity. So computer security on the internet equals cybersecurity. Cool word to remember. And now where my buttons are. All right, you use the buttons on the computer. They gave me a remote that does not work.
Okay.
So I was handicapped out of the box by my IT department. The first thing I'd like to talk about is fraudulent emails. The number one risk right now on using the internet is email. That ebbs and flows as time goes on, but right now the bad guys are mostly using email as a way to get into your computer or get into your business. So some of the types of fraudulent emails that they use are phishing, spear phishing, whaling, oh my. Computer people love to come up with titles like that. Phishing actually comes from in the late 70s, early 80s when we had hackers hacking phone systems. They called themselves phone freaks with the PH. That's why phishing is spelled PH. That means I'm sending you an email, it's got some bait in it, and I'm hoping you'll click on the link or open the attachment, and then I hook you and pull you in. Spear phishing is, I know who you are and what you do, and I'm tailoring my message to you to try to catch you and pull you in. Whaling is sending an email to a C-level or high management position in a company, or pretending to be that person in an attempt to cause fraud. So what can you look for when you get an email that would help you determine if it's legitimate or fraudulent? First of all, look at your sender's information. I have to back up a minute. Email and the internet were not created to be secure. They were created to be an open exchange of information. So by nature, unless someone's built security into what you're working on, it's not secure. So email is one of the worst. It's basically a postcard when you put the information out there. And things like the sender's information can be made counterfeit. But look at that first. If there's a misspelling, or if, for example, my email address has forthebank.com as its domain, I've seen emails pretending to be from me that say forthebnk.com, left out the A. Humans tend to fill in the blanks, so you just have to slow down a little bit and look for things like that. An email that doesn't have a greeting. If you get an email that says it's from your bank or it's from a business you do business with, it probably won't say Dear blank. It probably is going to have software at that company that will fill in your name, Dear Mrs. Morris, Dear what, a name like that. So if it's blank, that's a red flag. Spelling and grammar. This is not so much. It used to be a lot of fraudulent email came from foreign countries, and there would be giveaways in the spelling or the grammar, so it appeared that it was written by a foreign-speaking person.
Well, that during and spelling of a word.
Yes. So that's less apparent than it used to be, but I still see it out there. Urgency, there's a real key. If you get an email that says, I need you to do this right now, that's a real red flag, unless it's your mother. Mostly business emails aren't going to try to really push you to do something really rapidly. So if there's some kind of warning and they're trying to get you to do it right now, there's probably fraud involved. The faster someone reacts to an email, the more likely the criminal is to be able to capitalize on the recipient. Links to websites, and I have a slide to demonstrate this in the middle. A lot of times it'll say, please click on this link to see this news story. If you hover your mouse pointer over that link, did you know it will tell you where it's going to take you? So I have an example, and this is a little small, but if you see the hand pointing, it says, it says retrieve e-document. If you hover your mouse there, it'll turn into a little hand or some other indicator to show that it's giving you information. And then that little box, the rectangular box, will pop up above it, and that tells you where that link is really going. So this email couple things you can see are wrong with it. It didn't have an addressee, so who was it being sent to? That's something you usually see in an email that's missing there. But if it said it was from me, and I have an attachment I'd like you to open, well then it should be coming from forthebank.com. But it's coming from warmerlighting.com, which might be a real website domain, or it could be something that these criminals have registered themselves and they just use it to get you to click so they can download some malware to your computer. So that's an example of, if you're not sure, you can hover your mouse pointer over that link and see where it's actually going to take you. And if it doesn't look like somewhere you want to go, don't click on that. Here's an example of a malicious email that has a lot of the keys I talk about. So it's actually from a real sender. So in this case, you couldn't question that. This was a client of ours at the bank whose email account had been hijacked. So it came from his address, but again, the 2 is missing. The subject is kind of generic. You might expect something to come from someone that you know that would say, like, going out Monday night or in response to my loan or something like that. And then the rest of the document is very non-personal. There's no greeting at all. It doesn't say Dear Jane. It just says you've received a document from Chris using Dropbox, which is a legitimate site for sending files. If you would hover your mouse over the click here to see where you were actually going to retrieve that file, you would find out it was onlinedogs.in, which isn't Dropbox. Thank you for using Dropbox. The rest of it is, this person may have cut the information from an actual Dropbox email notification and used it to craft this. But again, your antenna should say, I don't know why Chris is sending me this attachment. Maybe I should call him and find out what this is, especially since the attachment isn't from Dropbox, it's from onlinedogs.in. So does that make sense? Good things to look for. One of the real frightening email compromises that's common right now is the term business email compromise, or BEC. The FBI is really trying to hone in on where these are coming from, because they are targeting the big companies. So remember, I talked about whaling. This is where the whaling terminology comes from. With a business email compromise, the bad guys will know they can go to LinkedIn and find out who's the CEO, who's the COO, who's the CFO. We share our information on LinkedIn, and there's good reason to do it. But remember, other people that maybe don't want to do business with you in a legitimate way can use that information too. So they would craft an email that either looks like it's from a C-level officer, or they send it to a C-level officer. And the idea there is to get the company to wire money quickly, and then they've stolen the money from you. So the goal, as I said, quick wire transfer of funds. There was a campaign of these types of emails earlier this year where they sent the email to the director of HR and said, I'm the CEO, please send me all the W-2s for the employees from this year. Anyone that answered that, now all of their employees are at risk of income tax refund fraud and other identity theft, if you think about what information is on your W-2. And some statistics as of June this year, there's been a 1,300% increase in identified losses since last year. So that's why I say this is the cyber scam going on right now. It's been reported in all 50 states and in 100 countries, and the combined losses are over $3 billion. The bad thing about a wire transfer is once that money's gone out, it's really difficult to pull it back. So if I wire money if I go into the bank and I say I need to wire $10,000 to Chase, first of all, they won't do it because I don't have $10,000. But say I did, and they wire it to Chase. Chase is under obligations and regulations, as the Bank of Edwardsville is, to move the money quickly to make the customer happy. Well, that backfires in cases like this. Once that money leaves Chase, it likely is going to go out of the country, and then there's no recovering it at that point. This is an example of a CEO whaling email that we got at our bank. It is very legitimate looking. I did an unprofessional job of blacking out our employee's face, but our emails do put a picture of every employee on it, which is something that we use to help us identify that emails are coming from inside. This one, in fact, came from outside. It used the ability, there are 2 sending fields in an email for sender. So one of them said it came from whoever at forthebank.com, but the legitimate email sender address, which was masked, was somewhere else. The subject line, again, there's no to, which is sort of a giveaway. The subject is request. The greeting is hi with a space for a name, but apparently they didn't have the right software to fill that name in, so just blank and a comma. Hope you are having a splendid day. I want you to quickly email me the details you will need to help me process an outgoing wire transfer to another bank. I will appreciate a swift email response. So we have 2 senses of urgency, quickly and swiftly. And it's, I need you to help me do the wire transfer. So this went to someone who had wire transfer capabilities and appeared to come from, well, our CEO. I don't think he'll get mad at me. And so the employee, this is common, you know, at first you're kind of thinking, well, I didn't really think he'd ask me to send a wire, but maybe he did. So the employee replied and said, I can't really do this, but I can write to someone else. So this is my employee at the bank saying, here's the information to, oh no, I'm sorry, this is the reply after my employee said, I can do it, but Cheryl's going to have to do it for you. What do you need? So then the bad guy comes back. And at this point, this happens really fast. The reply email is the actual counterfeiter or criminal waiting for that line and that hook to get somebody on it. And as soon as somebody's there, they reply fast. So we're saying, we want you to send $74,000 from any one of our accounts at the bank, which an employee wouldn't do. We would name an account to draw the money from. And send it to Key Bank in Indianapolis using this fraudulent business name. Process and email me once it's done, waiting for your swift response. Well, luckily at that point, my employee knew this wasn't right, and he stopped. But in a successful fraud, this would have gone through to a wire actually being initiated. Typically what happens is the funds are wired to another bank. Something, I think I may have this on the next slide, money mules, about halfway in the middle. Money mules is a term for people that think they have a legitimate job, but what their job function is to go collect money in an account that's been set up for them in cash and go to Western Union and buy Western Union and wire it to the Ukraine or wherever these bad people are. A lot of times the money mules are recruited through Craigslist job ads, sometimes Monster.com, but they're the people that get left holding the bag because they are directed by the fraudster to open an account that is used to capture the money, but then they go and withdraw cash. So they're left with the account that took the money out. They've wired the money out, and their instructions for their salaries to keep 5% or whatever. But when the bank calls and says, those are fraudulent wire transfer, we want the funds back, the money mule is left holding the bag. So that was a kind of fast overview of how scary email could be. I just would recommend, especially with business email, slow down as you're reading it. If something just doesn't seem right, I know the police will tell you, something doesn't seem right, trust your instincts. Like we have the police officer who comes to the bank every year to talk to us about shopping and busy shopping seasons, and that's one of the things he says. If you don't feel right about where your car is, or you think someone's following you, follow those instincts. And it's true in using the internet too. You think about it, the internet is just a whole bunch of computers all around the world connected to each other, and some of them that are using it, you wouldn't invite to sit down and have a cup of coffee with. Another current fraud that's going on is tax refund fraud. How many of you have read about this? Yeah, every year, this has been going on for 3 or 4 years now. Every year, the amount of money seems to get bigger until this year because it was easy fraud to carry out. So in this case, all you need to file an online income tax refund is your social security number and date of birth. Well, how many places have you shared that information on the internet? So it's easily obtainable by fraudsters. So they can take those two pieces of information and initiate an electronic tax return. They completely make up the W-2 information. So I know a lot of people tell me, well, I haven't had my W-2 yet. How are they filing an income tax return? They don't want to file for your $20,000 a year income. They want to file for a $500,000 income and get big money refunded. So they make up the rest of it. One of the new tricks, and then they file early, so they may be doing these filings the first couple of weeks in January before many of us have even thought about collecting the data for our income tax return. They asked the IRS to issue the refund as a prepaid card. This is something the IRS did in response to people who don't have bank accounts but like to get their money back other than wait for a paper check. The thing about a prepaid card is you can sell it. So if I get a prepaid card from the IRS, I can go out onto the internet and sell those cards, or I can use it to buy computers and then sell the computers to other people. So it's a good way to move the money through without being identified. And again, money mules are involved. I know we see a lot at the bank is one customer who opens a new account and then they start getting 6 or 7 income tax refunds. So unless you're an accountant, you're probably not going to do that. And if you're an accountant, you probably aren't opening a personal account to get other people's refunds. This became particularly ugly this year because earlier the IRS actually had their computers breached and millions of records were put at risk as a result of that. I hate picking on the government. They have really archaic systems and they do the best they can with what they have, but it was probably just a matter of time for the IRS to get hacked. And the statistics for this year, 42,000 fraudulent tax returns. Of those, $227 million in claims were made. 79.6% or 100 million was prevented, but that still leaves what, 50 million that went out. That's much lower than previous years because the IRS has added a few additional security features. One thing, I'll make one political statement here. If you do talk to any of your political representatives, we don't get our W-2s fast, and that's a problem. If my W-2 is being issued in the first 2 weeks of January, the IRS could wait until it was issued and match that W-2 to my return, and that would be an extra way of guaranteeing that it's me. I don't know what all the wheels are that it takes to get that wrapped up, but it is one of the things they're talking about. But as you can see, the IRS has done enough that the amount of fraud has dropped off, but they'll just go somewhere else. And one of the other places they'll go is ransomware. Has anyone heard of this particular?
Some area hospitals been noted for that.
So ransomware is if you don't pay attention to the security on your email. Typically it's an email link, but sometimes it's a place like you've gone to a website and you're surfing on the web and all of a sudden a window similar to this will pop up. And that window says, well, your personal files are encrypted. All your important information on this computer, photos, videos, documents, I've encrypted them. If you'd like to get back to them, send me $300 USD and then click next to find out how you can send that money to me. Typically they'll ask you to buy Bitcoin, which is an experience you don't want to live through. And then there's a nice little clock ticking over there, so that's saying, if you don't send me the money by the time this timer times out, I will destroy the key and you'll never get your files back. This has gone on for about a year now, and I have seen some security companies that have started to have some success with cracking the key, but you can't count on that. So, yes, we've seen hospitals that have been attacked, police departments that have been hit by this. And the question is, if this would happen to me, what would I do? Would I pay that ransom? Well, if I've backed up my files, I don't have to pay the ransom. I can restore my computer and restore my files, but I won't ask you to put your hands on how many of you back up your files because a lot of people still don't.
Like once a year?
That's the key to this. And if you're a hospital, you got to pay that ransom because, or the police department, you can't not get your data back. Most of the time,
So they actually give you the data back?
They send you a link and you go and you get the key, which is a password that you type in, and then it unencrypts your files.
Yeah, but you don't know if that'll It occur next month, it is already built in your computer.
That's true. Now, it is not good business for them to not give you a key that gives you your files back, because then word would get out, don't give them the money, because they're not going to give me my files back anyway. But they might come back later and ask for more. So it's just, this is, I think that's my last slide. Bottom line is, on your computer, make sure that you keep all your software patched and up to date, not just the operating system, say Windows. If you're using Adobe Reader, if you're using Adobe Flash, make sure these types of programs that you're patching them as well. Because the way these malwares get onto your computer is a known vulnerability that's been patched, but the criminals know that maybe most people haven't done it yet. So they use that vulnerability to access your computer. Back up your files, because then you can go, okay, sure, you encrypted it, and you can just reformat your computer and get your pictures back. And always trust those little arrows on the back of your neck when something doesn't seem right. So that's my spiel.